Well, Greeny, we're halfway through another baseball season, and we're really seeing some players who stand out as winners.
Kind of like business travelers who win at business by staying at La Quinta Inns and Suites.
That's because you can put your La Quinta Returns loyalty points to work on the spot with instant free nights.
Just drive up with no reservation and instantly redeem points for a free night that same night simply by using the La Quinta app.
It's like hitting a grand slam.
With an app instead of a bat.
Well played.
Prepare to win at business by learning more about instant free nights and check out the summer rates at lq.com. And we are back in better than ever. Good morning. Mike and Mike with you on ESPN Radio and on ESPN2, where, as we speak, the first fascinating move of the 2017 football season has been made, complete with super high stakes, big names, big risk, and no shortage of controversy. Away we go into football, big fella, as Jay Cutler today will sign a contract to become the quarterback of the Miami Dolphins.
Boy, oh boy, go away for a few days and all hell breaks loose. Jay Cutler, we're gonna not get to see him start in the broadcast booth. Back on the field again, seems to be having to be prodded into it, I should say. All we talked about was Colin Kaepernick. He's going to need a big injury for him to get a chance now to play after the whole Baltimore Ravens situation. And there's a big injury, and turns out to be some bad luck as far as who the coach is down there and who he had coached previously. Jay Cutler, we got a whole lot to get into there.
Absolutely. I mean, I think if we thought that there was going to be a quarterback that might come out of the broadcast booth this year, maybe we thought it would be Tony Romo,
right?
Going back to Dallas. That's not the case.
By the way,
going to Miami.
Did you see the shed he was practicing in? And you were out of the country, so you probably didn't.
But I've seen some stuff.
The Hall of Fame game?
Yeah.
He was practicing. They were doing a practice announcing team, and they were like in some shed, like 70 yards away from the field. Chris Collinsworth was joking. It's like, I don't even know how he sees the field from there. You look in there, and there was like plywood in there. They set like a tube up in there that sometimes we'll have under our seat for air conditioning.
Yeah.
To go into the building. It was very makeshift for his practice there. But you're right. He was the one we thought if there was a major injury, maybe depending on the team, would he be talked out of retirement? But it was Jay Cutler and an 8-figure salary.
And that's where we're going to begin here after we go off the top. And let's take you through some of the top stories in sports. It begins with the L.A. Dodgers.
Wow.
Let's just, Mike, there's no other way to say it. They're the best baseball team we've ever seen. No team has played at a clip the way they're playing over the last 2 months or so in our lifetime. They beat the Mets yesterday. What they did to the Mets in this series, Mike, would be considered like a criminal act in 43 states.
Overall in the series, they finished 7-0 against the Mets this season. First time they've ever swept a season series against New York. They outscored the Mets by 42 runs in 7 games. They finished this last series, with 10 home runs in 3 games. It's just ridiculous. But listen, the Mets just happen to be the team in the way right now. What you said before is what we're seeing out of them. So you want to talk about we're going to finish this regular season, and there's going to be nothing on anybody's minds associated with the Dodgers of, we had better win the World Series. We got to get Kershaw back, and we got to see what he's going to be like, when he gets back. They pick up Darvish in the trade, something that happened while we were both gone.
Yeah.
See where that's going to go, but they got to get Kershaw back without question, and Kershaw is going to have to pitch better in the postseason than he has. But the way they're playing right now, talk about overwhelming favorites they're going to be going into the postseason is ridiculous.
44-7 in their last 51 games. Meanwhile, happy birthday today to one of the great young stars in sports, who is only one day away from having the best birthday you could have. And that's Mike Trout, who is 26 years old today.
Doesn't it feel like he should be 40? We've been talking about him forever because he's been great for what would be really the short time he has been in this league. It's ridiculous. The last player to record his 1,000th hit on his birthday, and that's what he's looking to do. He's one shy of joining the 1,000 hit club. The last person to do it, 1998, Hal Morris, when he turned 33. Now, last year on his birthday, didn't do too well. It was 0 for 4 with 4 strikeouts. Not the greatest thing in the world there, but he's off to one of the best starts to his career we've ever seen. Ty Cobb, the only position player in baseball history with a better WAR through the age of 25. He's ahead of guys like Roger Hornsby and Mickey Mantle and great names like that. Only Ty Cobb ahead of him. The guy, I mean, you want to talk about two of the, obviously him and Bryce Harper, the two young stars we talk about, but it seems like Trout has been in the league forever.
So does
Off the top.
It seemed with Sidney Crosby, who himself himself celebrates a birthday today. Sidney Crosby is 30 years old. And another one, because he came up so young and he's been in the middle of so much so quickly, he's another one that if you had just closed your eyes and said, how old is Sidney Crosby, I would have guessed older than 30.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And it's his day with the Cup, the Stanley Cup, after winning the Stanley Cup at his home province of Nova Scotia. He'll have it around there. He turns 4 days after Tom Brady turned 40. Crosby's 1,027 career points before turning 30 ranks 12th in NHL history. He's one of 8 players in NHL history to record 1,000 points and win 3 Stanley Cups before his 30th birthday. The other 7 all in the Hall of Fame, which is exactly where Sid the Kid's going to end up.
I think if there's one thing that we've learned from this conversation, it is that all the really great ones are born in August.
Oh, God. We're going to have to talk about that, aren't we?
Off the top.
The Falcons, Jalen Collins has been suspended 10 games for PEDs. Mike, it's the second straight year Atlanta will have to do at least some of the season without its terrific young corner.
Second rounder, 215 out of LSU, admitted to a couple of violations at LSU for marijuana. Now, last year, he missed the first 4 games of the season for a PED violation. That's why it's 10 this time around. Guy's got some issues, no doubt about it. I mean, especially with the PEDs, 2 years in a row, now going to miss all these games. He can be with the team through the preseason. Once the regular season starts, that's going to be it for being around. Guy ended up with 2 interceptions last year, a team that went to the Super Bowl. They were really going to be counting on this guy.
Yeah, he's a good player.
Without question, counting on this guy, and he just cost himself and obviously his teammates as well.
And a bunch of money, too. His salary this year was just under $1 million. He's going to lose over half of that. So there are a lot of ramifications to this. Little tiny pinpricks to a team's season that begin early on, and that's one that certainly doesn't help a team coming off a devastating Super Bowl loss. And then, of course, there are the bigger, higher-profile moves like quarterback moves, and that's where we began with Jay Cutler, who agrees yesterday to a 1-year, $10 million deal with the Dolphins, $3 million in incentives. We're going to get into all the details for you here. He will show up in Miami. He had a previously scheduled engagement yesterday that he couldn't break, so he's actually getting there this morning. He'll take a physical, which no one expects to be an issue. Will sign today and should start practicing tomorrow.
What great leverage. Hey, you want to come play quarterback? Nah, I don't think so. How about for, $6-7 million? Nah, I'm going to go in the booth. How about $8-9 million? Nah, not really. I'm going to really start talking. $10 million? Okay, I'm good. All right, let's get me in.
It's a really interesting situation.
It is. I mean, which he had all the leverage in the world if he wanted to come back.
Assuming if he really didn't mind not playing, which it seems he didn't mind.
Right.
He had an excellent next gig. Mm-hmm. He is a guy who I have a feeling is going to be a sneaky good broadcaster, and what I mean by that is he's not someone that when he was playing you would ever have said he's going to be a great broadcaster. No. I just have a feeling he's going to be good.
I mean, I have no idea. Him and Tony Romo were the 2 newbies this year, and Tony Romo looks like he's actually going to do the broadcasting job. And Cutler, we're just talking about reports, and we'll get into all that about he was leaning toward not. Was that just a leverage play to get the most money he could? But 1 year at $10 million, not a bad deal. I guarantee he wasn't getting $10 million from Fox to be in the booth.
No, that's for sure. Off the Top with Mike and Mike is brought to you by Zipa. Go to Zipa.com. That's spelled ZYPPAH.com. Get a Zipa so you can stop snoring and enjoy the summer. So there you have it. The Miami Dolphins will be spending the second most money of any team in the NFL this season on quarterbacks, second only to the Chicago Bears. And there is a not so subtle irony in that, of course, the Chicago Bears were the team that didn't want Jay Cutler anymore. In fact, couldn't wait to get rid of Jay Cutler. And now Adam Gase, with whom he did. I will admit this, because everyone has been waiting on the Kaepernick thing and to see where that goes. And the assumption has been, a team will get an injury at quarterback and then they'll look at him closely. And for a while it looked like it was going to be Baltimore, and now it seems to have pivoted away there. And now you hear Miami. The moment I heard the report about the injury to Tannehill, my first thought was Cutler. It was not Kaepernick.
There's no doubt about it.
In this unique case because of Adam Gase.
It absolutely was Cutler. We had talked about Cutler before he said he was retiring and going into the booth, and he had talked about the fine line of retirement, of are you really done with football? Are teams just saying you're done with football? If he wasn't getting a chance to be a starter somewhere, he was one of the names we mentioned before his retirement that he may wait for an injury to be able to come back. He wasn't going to be handed a starting job. He was going to go somewhere. So he could kind of have his, if he felt it was a good situation, he would come back. If not, he would take advantage of other opportunities. In this case, it would be the broadcast booth. But I'm with you. And I've heard so much, obviously, with us both gone when this happened, so much talk about, oh, my God, they should have signed Colin Kaepernick. What's the deal? And I'm with you. The first name I thought of was Cutler. Cutler had a great year. Well, great year.
He had a better year, yeah.
Statistically, it was his highest rated year. Let me put it that way. He had a little over 92 rating, which was the highest of his career. But he was 6-9 as a starter, 21 touchdowns, 11 interceptions, 64% completion. This was under Adam Gase in Chicago. So that's exactly what I thought as well. I thought, well, I don't know what he's been doing. If he says he was retired and getting ready for the broadcast booth, I doubt he was out every day doing, quarterback things. But, he's played it for a long time. I got to believe he's going to pick it up. And one of the biggest barriers getting out there is verbiage and language. And he steps in and he knows the language. He steps in right now and he absolutely knows the language. It really is like learning a different language if you don't know the system. So that's the ease now that they have. They don't have to worry about that part of it. It's just going to be kicking off the rust and getting him. They have some time. You got obviously 4 preseason games to work through whenever he's going to jump into those and start working his way in. But I'm with you. He's the first name I thought of as well.
The other thing that I think it helps here is this doesn't happen a week before the season starts. It happens a week before the first preseason game.
Right.
So if he isn't in the greatest football shape, he's got time. He's got a month to get himself ready for that. I know these days guys work out throughout the entire offseason, but he has plenty of time to get himself in good shape.
He does.
The circumstance that this is most reminiscent of, I guess, in recent memory, is Minnesota last year.
Right.
Remember, and they lose Bridgewater way later in the game than this is.
They do.
In the calendar, and they wind up having to make a huge move to sign. They trade a first-round pick to get Sam Bradford.
The difference there is Bradford was playing football, and Bradford was, in the game and not out. You weren't pulling someone from who was going to start their new career. So I'm sure that's a thought process there. But he will. And listen, they have a lot of the guys like Matt Moore down there. Matt Moore is going into his 7th year in Miami. I don't know if people really know that. He was with Carolina for a few years. Now his 7th year in Miami. Last year was the most starts he had when Tannehill got hurt. He had 4 starts last year. There's some people that like him down there and feel pretty good about him, kind of that interim guy. Well, Jay Cutler's going to eventually be the starter there, but Matt Moore, I think they like what he can bring them if he has to come off the bench, and we'll see. And then the division they're in, Cutler is 0-3 against New England, got blasted by them. I mean,
everybody's 0-3 against New England. I was just going to say,
yeah. I think a winning record against New York. I think 500 against the Buffalo Bills. So we'll see. So
he's actually unbeaten against the Jets.
Yeah, well,
because
I didn't want to.
He's winless against the Patriots. He's unbeaten against the Jets, and he's 500 against the Dolphins.
You just had a birthday yesterday. I didn't want to rub it in.
No,
too quickly
listen, that's low on my list of concerns. Here's the thing: is that Matt Moore, there were 2 outcries with the signing of Cutler. One of them was very quiet, comparatively speaking, and the other one was very loud. The loud one was Colin Kaepernick. Yeah. Why didn't they sign him? We'll talk about that. That's a much bigger conversation. The very quiet one was from the small group of people who said, Matt Moore's never gotten a chance. We want to see him. Well, guess what? He'll get his chance.
Yes, he will.
I mean, right now, you haven't made a commitment to Jay Cutler that says, well, he's now the quarterback for the rest of my life. I don't know what the future is of Ryan Tannehill. They actually don't owe him any money after this season if they don't want to. So they can actually pull the plug on Tannehill if they want to. If Matt Moore plays great, he has a chance to be the quarterback of that team. Absolutely. I mean, they signed Cutler to come in there, and I think in Gaze's mind, he'll become the starter, but it's not as though they've hitched their horse to that wagon in such a significant way. If Matt Moore plays lights out, he'll be the quarterback.
Yeah, Matt Moore will get his shot. As I mentioned, 4 starts last year, 63%, 8 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. They do like him there, 7th year there. So, yeah, he will get his opportunity there, and the Cutler thing is a 1-year deal. It's a deal, to get through to then you see what's going to happen with Tannehill, because from that story, a lot of people going back to last year when you heard it, why didn't he just have the surgery?
Right.
Remember.
Why didn't he?
Well,
I didn't even realize this had happened until I was reading it last week, and they decided to treat it with rest, which I know you said to me a million times, if you can avoid surgery, you do it.
Yeah, you don't want to have, foreign objects in your body. I mean, the last thing in the world you want to do is get cut on. But there's a line.
Although, actually, maybe the last thing you want to do is, in a non-contact injury before the season even starts the following year, hurt it again.
Well, that's the risk they obviously took. So you either go in and repair it, and now you've had a surgery on your knee, or you try and let it heal because you missed the last 4 games, then you have the entire offseason to let it mend more. So I understand, hindsight's always 20/20. It was a partial tear, so it was one of those where you had the line. I mean, when you have something set up surgery, get in there, repair it, start the rehab. We know you'll be back in 8, 9, 10 months, whatever it's going to be. Get that thing going and start on it. Or it's, we're not too, because we see it a lot. As I said, surgeries, a lot of times, guys will hold off. We did it all the time. If you can, you hold off on it, and then in January, you basically form a line. You form a line, and you get surgery, whether you have to get cut or what we would call an oil change. You'd get scoped, you get the floater sucked out of there, you start training, and you get ready for next year. So, or if it's a little more intense than that, then you have to make a decision. Do I have the surgery, or do I just let it heal? I give it some time to let it heal. The problem you run is you hear about guys in May saying, well, now they have to have surgery because they tried to let it heal. It didn't heal like they wanted to, so then they have surgery. So then they're backed up a few more months. So it's a tough line it's a balancing act there. And this one they lost. This one you can look back and say, my God, he was just running out of bounds, has the knee brace on. He steps, you can see it's a little awkward step, and here we are, could be gone for the season. So you immediately think, well, why didn't you get it repaired last year? As I said, hindsight is 20/20. I get the situation where you say, I have time. Let's let this thing heal and see if it can heal on its own.
All right, we're Mike and Mike, presented by Progressive Insurance. More independent agents sell Progressive Insurance than any other brand. Find an agent at Progressive.com. Now that's Progressive. Let's go through some of the stuff from our insiders. Our NFL reporter is Jeff Darlington talking about Jay Cutler, and to the point you just made, Mike, he said there isn't any question in the mind of the coach, Cutler's coming in to be the starter.
Cutler knew coming in that he's coming in for a starting role. Gase has made that clear to him, and that does make for a little bit of a sticky situation with Matt Moore because Moore is a very popular guy in the locker room and obviously has seemingly earned his stripes with the Miami Dolphins. But the Dolphins more comfortable with Cutler coming in to be their starter for a 16-game season. I do anticipate that Cutler will be the starter as soon as he can get up to speed. And that is why the Dolphins were willing to sign him to that $10 million deal with $3 million in added incentives.
Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt about that. Again, everybody has their first preseason game, save for the 2 teams that played in the Hall of Fame game. The first preseason, I think it starts Wednesday. I think Carolina and somebody play, I forgot who it is, Carolina and Houston, I believe, play on Wednesday. So they get going, and Matt Moore will, Cutler isn't going to take the number 1 reps today. I mean, it's just not going to happen. But he does know the system, so he can work into it a lot quicker. There's going to be getting in some football shape that has to go on as well. But that's life, man. I mean, Matt Moore has basically been a backup his entire career. He has been a backup his entire career. Back in 2011, he played 13 games for Miami, 4 last year. So he's 32 years old. Cutler is 34 years old. I mean, that's business, man. I mean, everybody knows Cutler's going to come in and be the guy. There may be some guys in that locker room that say, hey, Matt Moore, why don't you give him a chance? But bottom line is, if Jay Cutler's in the pocket, the other guys are going to play. The other guys are going to do their thing. Nobody's going to be dejected and not play well, and there's going to be some big controversy. It's just not going to happen.
They're a good team, too. They're a sneaky, I'll use that again. It's the second time I've used that word this morning. They're a sneaky good team. They have sneaky good receivers. They have a guy in Jay Ajayi who, when last season began, no one had ever heard of. And by the end of the season, he's one of the most productive running backs in the league. They've got a good offensive line with Pouncey coming back from injury.
Yeah,
They've got a big D-line.
They just had an injury on their O-line. Which
how bad?
Out. I believe it was a torn bicep with Larson's. Paul Carr, you can tell. I think it was a bicep, so he's going to be gone. But to your point,
I hadn't seen that.
You mentioned Jay Jarvis Landry had 94 catches last year, over 1,100 yards. They do. They do. They do have some firepower there, and you're right about Jay Ajayi. He came in well. Pouncey. Now, again, when I say about losing Larson, Pouncey is a guy they need to get back in there to run that line. He's had the hip injury, so we'll see where that goes. As Tunsil, their top pick last year, moves out to left tackle.
Who they stole. I mean, that's another.
Yeah.
Remember, the Laramie, going back all the way to that, the Laramie Tunsil thing, which he was at one time projected to be the number one pick in the draft. Then he had the bong mask incident on draft night, and he winds up falling to wherever it was, 12 or 13.
Yep.
They wound up getting one of the top 2 or 3 players in the draft.
So he'll be out,
now he moves in.
He'll be out at left tackle.
And Ndamukong Suh, who has played better than his stats would show. And the defense was pretty good. They made the playoffs last year.
It's a team that everybody is waiting to take the next step, and quite honestly, waiting for Ryan Tannehill to take the next step as well. So we'll see. I mean, basically, Tannehill, a pocket guy who can move. Jay Cutler, a pocket guy, he had to move.
Yeah.
He had to run around, and he knows the system. So to me, this was not any kind of a controversial move at all of, just another team that doesn't want to sign Colin Kaepernick. To me, this one made much more sense to sign Jay Cutler.
It can certainly be seen that way. I understand that, and I actually agree. The other thing I'd say on this is, the fascinating part, because Cutler to me has been a very interesting player throughout his tenure in the NFL. He gets one more shot. One last chance to fulfill the promise. Here is a guy who has all the talent in the world still. There are some guys who, when they're 60, you can wake them up from a dead sleep, and he could still throw a ball through a brick wall. Vinny Testaverde is one of those guys. This is one of those guys. Cutler is one of those guys. He gets one last chance with maybe the one guy left in the league that believes in him, in Adam Gase. So I, for one, am fascinated to see how the thing turns out. We've got a lot to get to this morning. We're Mike and Mike. We're just getting started. We're presented by Progressive Insurance. We got the perspective of many this morning, including Bomani Jones today, and Dan Lebitard from down there in Miami, and Herman today, and more. All our guests on the Shell Pennzoil Performance line. And let me just say, before we go any further, that shirt is fabulous on you. What is that? Is that new?
I think so.
I think it's new. It's a new shirt, and it's fantastic. You got a little makeup smudge on your shirt, right there, but it's a terrific shirt on you.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, it's very nice.
Didn't know we were going there.
Well, I'm just sitting here. As we're chatting, I have to admit, there was a part of me that was getting a little lost in the shirt. You're talking, and I'm trying to listen to what you're saying, and I'm thinking, well, that's a terrific-looking shirt.
This old thing?
You just threw that on for my birthday celebration.
That's exactly right.
Well, Greeny, we're halfway through another baseball season, and we're really seeing some players who stand out as winners.
Kind of like business travelers who win at business by staying at La Quinta Inns and Suites.
That's because you can put your La Quinta Returns loyalty points to work on the spot with instant free nights.
Just drive up with no reservation and instantly redeem points for a free night that same night simply by using the La Quinta app.
It's like hitting a grand slam.
With an app instead of a bat.
Well played.
Prepare to win at business by learning more about instant free nights and check out the summer rates at lq.com.
Hey everyone, Mike Golick here. Support for Mike and Mike podcast comes from our friends at Rocket Mortgage by Quicken Loans. Chances are you're confident when it comes to your work, your hobbies, your life. Rocket Mortgage gives you that same level of confidence when it comes to buying a home or refinancing your existing home loan. With Rocket Mortgage, you can apply simply and understand fully so you can mortgage confidently. To get started, go to rocketmortgage.com/Mikes. Equal housing lender, licensed in all 50 states, NMLSconsumeraccess.org number 3030.
And real quickly, happy belated birthday to you.
Thank you.
Today we have a 30-year-old in Sidney Crosby, a 26-year-old in Mike Trout. And yesterday you turned the big 5-0.
I did.
Wow, I see
did.
As a present to yourself, you colored your hair again.
I did not color my hair one bit. I had a delightful little birthday getaway. Thank you very much for all the nice messages that I got over the weekend.
Join the club.
I feel good.
Yeah.
I'm not going to lie to you. I didn't know how I'd feel about it.
Good.
I feel good. I remember when you turned 50, it's just funny. When you turned 50, that felt very old to me. And now I'm turning 50. It doesn't feel that old.
No. I see how it works.
Really does.
Yeah,
I guess that's how life is.
Yeah, that's how it is.
But I feel
50,
good.
Yeah.
Look, you can't ask for
50.
more.
You're old. 50.
Well, it depends on who you compare me to.
Well, I'd say, knowing your lifestyle and the whole deal, I'd say you're probably on hole 15.
No way. I'm still on the front
16?
nine. I'm on the front nine, baby. I'm on the front nine.
No, you've at least made the turn. Come on.
I'm putting right now on 8, and they gave it to me already. It's a gimme, which didn't happen nearly enough on the golf trip I just took back with the crew that I was with. But anyway, I might actually, well, whatever. No one wants to get into this now. I might later do a little Facebook thing on my golf trip because I played it was the best golf not how I played, but the places that I went to that I've ever played in my entire life.
Would I have been able to play on any of them?
Yes, of course. You would have loved it.
I thought you'd tell me when guys aren't very good, caddies just leave your clubs and walk away.
No, they don't walk away. They mock you a little. They bet on you and against you and stuff like that.
Will they drink with me?
Yes, they will drink and maybe allow you to drink with them.
Oh, okay.
If you're not playing well, they may not give you any of what they're drinking.
Oh, that's not cool.
But you would have liked the places. You just wouldn't handle the volume. We play a lot.
Yeah, I couldn't
my
do
group
that.
We played 9 rounds in 6 days. We walked all of them.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Well, it was fun.
Yeah.
All right. Anyway, thank you again. Thank to you and to everybody. I got a lot of nice messages for my birthday. Let's check some of the messages we're getting on the 1-800-Flowers.com Twitter feed today. Larry Ambrose tweets, does Miami have better skill position players than Cutler and Gaze had in Chicago with Landry, Stills, and Parker and Ajayi? If you don't follow them, they have 3 wide receivers, all of whom have numbers in the teens, which I always find fascinating, right? Their numbers like 10, 11, and 13 or something. And they're all good. They're interchangeably good.
The Jarvis Landry, who we're talking about, had 95 catches last year for over 1,100 yards. 2015, the year that Adam Gase and Cutler were together, and Cutler had his best by rating year. The leading receiver that year, Alshon Jeffrey, 54 receptions. 54 receptions. Jarvis Landry had 94. 54.
Was Marshall on that team still? I'm just trying to do the math. Brandon Marshall was not on that team.
Second, Martellus Bennett with 53 receptions.
So that was the first year that Marshall was with the Jets.
And then Matt Forte, the running back, had 44 receptions. So your leading receiver had 54 receptions. Jarvis Landry is, in my opinion, underrated. He is an excellent receiver.
I agree.
So you want, and Jay Ajayi, listen, Matt Forte that year, as I mentioned, 44 receptions, carried the ball 218 times for under 900 yards. They average over 4 yards a carry. Jay Ajayi's a hell of a runner.
He's a horse.
Catches the ball out of the backfield as well. So I do like their skill position players better than what Jay Cutler had in Chicago in 2015. And I like their defense better. I like Miami's defense better than what Chicago had in 2015.
The Cutler had 1 year where he had Alshon Jeffrey, Brandon Marshall, Martellus Bennett, and Matt Forte. And that was the year, I'll never forget it, and I'm not calling him out or anything. I mean, Brian Billick predicted before the season that Cutler was going to be the MVP of the league because he had everything in the world out there for him, and it could not have gone more the other way. And so I was trying to remember if this was the year that we were talking about, but that would have been before Gase. I mean, look, the Cutler defenders are out there, and they have a million different things you can point to the 27 different offensive coordinators he had and all the different offenses and everything else. He gets one last shot. That's what this is. This is one last chance for Jay Cutler to live up to some of the promise that he had coming in.
And a quick note, I mentioned Alshon Jeffrey was the leading receiver. He played in 9 games that year and was still the leading receiver by 1 over Martellus Bennett. So that even speaks more. Jason tweets in, how was Jay Cutler the first person you thought of? Dude, not a leader, bad attitude, no accuracy. Do you want me to go on? You go on all you want. The bottom line is when he was with Adam Gase, with lesser talent, he had one of his better years. As far as a rating was concerned, he had 4 or 5 better years with more touchdowns, but 21 touchdowns, 11 interceptions. It was one of, you can help me, Paul Carr, either one of or the best touchdown to interception ratio that year that he had in his career. So that's why you take him. And anybody that's saying maybe he'll have a different, I don't, at this point, Jay Cutler is Jay Cutler. If he mopes around, he mopes around. Throw touchdowns, don't throw interceptions. He did it better that year in 2015 than any other year with Adam Gase. And he has better talent around him in Miami. So, yes, it is the first person that I thought of when Tannehill went down.
There just isn't any question that the perception around the sport was that Gase and Cutler had a great relationship. That little period of time where they worked together, they had a great relationship and it worked. And it went a long way towards Gase.
That's why Gase got his job.
Correct. Yeah. Gase got the quarterback whisperer.
Yep.
That
mantle,
was
the year. Yeah.
In large part because he seemed to be the one guy that could kind of work with Jay Cutler. Right. And then, of course, it worked so well that he went and got a head coaching job, and that was it for Cutler there. So that's why I thought of it when I thought of him. I will say this. I can't sit here. I have not had the ability, obviously, nor has anyone, to poll every owner in the National Football League and ask how many of them would be willing to sign Colin Kaepernick. I'm just guessing. I'm just throwing a number out there. I would guess there are probably 20 of them that wouldn't even think about it, that there's nothing to discuss, no way in the world. He's not on my football team. That's a guess based on nothing. Right. I would guess that there are then the other 12, generally speaking, don't need a quarterback. I'm just making up numbers here, and that's why he doesn't have a job. I would guess, if I were guessing, and that's all I'm doing, that Stephen Ross, who was the owner of the Miami Dolphins, is one of those who would sign Kaepernick, that he would have had a chance there. Knowing what I know of him, having seen him like a couple of weeks ago in Los Angeles at the Humanitarian Awards, seeing what he's been involved in, seeing the way he handled the locker room controversy they had there years ago with Richie Incognito and the way he was proactive in addressing that. This is a pure guess, and we'll ask Le Batard when he comes on with us because he's much closer to the situation than I am sitting here. I would have guessed this was an owner who would not have said no way on Kaepernick. I don't know that. I'm guessing.
Well, and one thing we want to ask Dan Le Batard is also a guy that was in Kaepernick wearing a Fidel Castro shirt, which
Correct.
You don't know how it's going to play in Miami.
In Miami, that's as significant as anything.
I sit there and say you know how it's going to play in Miami. So. Listen, that whole situation, it got to me, now I was following this because I wasn't here, got ridiculous in Baltimore. It got ridiculous in Baltimore. To hear Steve Bisciotti saying, pray for us, and we're still determined, give me a break. At some point, you either know you're going to sign him or you're not. You want to talk about just hedging because you weren't going to sign him to keep kind of babbling the way you were about that, to me was ridiculous. At this point, every team out there has had the conversation with their owner, or the owner has had their conversation with the GM and the coach that says, we'll be interested if the situation arises, or we're not interested at all. So to prolong this, say we're still thinking about it, looking at it, that means they're not going to sign him. Okay? That means they're not going to sign him. At least to me. That's what I got out of the whole Baltimore situation. That got ridiculous.
Yeah. I look, that's why I bring up Miami. That's one of the places I might have thought it might happen, and then they get the quarterback injury. But there is the connection, the direct connection between Gaze and Cutler. And I had forgotten about candidly, I've been traveling, so if there's been a bunch written about this, I didn't see it. I had forgotten about the Castro T-shirt and how that connection might have been part of the equation in South Florida as well.
Guys don't really talk about antiperspirant. Despite that, 91% of Dove Men Plus Care users recommend it. Here's what they said.
It blocks the, perspiration, I think is the fancy word.
It's comfortable. It smells nice. My girl likes the smell.
Well, I don't know. It's hard.
I think it's quite masculine. My underarms aren't the worst thing at the gym.
It's kind of like the Hoover Dam from my armpits, I guess.
Dove Men Plus Care Antiperspirant. Tough on sweat, not on skin.
Mike, and just, again, looking at it quickly, those three receivers for the Dolphins, Devontae Parker had 56 catches.
He was second. Landry was first with 94, Parker 56, and then you had Kenny Stills with 42, but Stills led the way with 9 touchdowns. Landry had 4, Parker had 4, Deion Sims had 4. For receiving wise.
That's what I'm saying. Go find a trio of wide receivers that combine to put up better numbers than that. They're not going to be a lot. I'm not saying they're going to be the best.
And then throw in there, Jay Ajayi ran the ball 260 times for just under 1,300 yards, just a tick under 5 yards per carry, and had 8 rushing touchdowns.
And that's without playing the beginning of the season. Like, you never even heard of him before the season began. And then he showed up with his English accent, and he's running all over everybody. So they're good. The Dolphins are a good team. So it makes sense to me that they would go out and make a win-now kind of move, because I do think that they view themselves, and correctly so, as a win-now team. I do have a stat here that he just sent me on the receiver's size. They're all small. Actually, Parker's
6'3". He's 6'3". Landry's 5'11". Stills, I remember him at Oklahoma. We played against my boys and that when Notre Dame went to Oklahoma in 2012. He's 6'1".
So they're good, and Ajayi is good. So the answer is yes, they're good. Plus, they have Julius Thomas, who they got in the trade from Jacksonville, who Peyton Manning made into a star in Denver as a big-time tight end, and he hasn't done much since then. So we'll see if he can add anything to it. All right, let's do Straight Talk, which is brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless. Best phones, best networks, no contracts. Stories that came out of Miami suggested that the names the Dolphins considered when they were making a decision on who they bring in when they see just how bad it is with Tannehill include Kyle Orton, Tim Tebow, Colin Kaepernick, and they wind up signing Jay Cutler. Now, again, of all of those, because of the history between Cutler and Gaze, that one, I understood it, and it was actually the one that I was anticipating. Do you think serious consideration was given to Tebow?
I think it was another name. You realize Gaze and Tebow were together in Denver.
Yes,
names were brought up that Gaze was with. That to me.
But was that one where you even bother writing it down on the piece of paper?
Oh no, I don't think it got any further than what quarterbacks did you coach when you were at Denver and in Chicago, and you start listing them, and then it went no further than that. That's my opinion. But I understand. Okay, here's a list. All right, who did you coach? What quarterbacks did you coach? Well, boom, boom, boom. Tim Tebow, one of them, but I don't think it got any further than that. No,
okay.
I think
I just read a story that said that's one of the people they quote unquote considered. And I'm just curious what considered means.
To me, I just think it was the name of a quarterback who worked with Adam Gase and went no further than that.
And
that's
then the next thing I'd like to do, and again, we'll ask Dan Lebitard when he joins us because he's closer to the situation there in Miami than we are. Again, my perception on the owner of the Dolphins, Stephen Ross, is that he would be one of the owners who would sign Colin Kaepernick.
Well, he had said, Stephen Ross, there was an article that I saw where he said he didn't have a problem with the guys kneeling.
Right. Well, he had multiple players on the Dolphins that did.
Right.
Kaepernick started it, but he certainly was, as everyone remembers, by far, clearly not the only player in the NFL.
No, not at all, but obviously the headliner there. So, as I said, so the owner, and that's the key. In all of this, there are 32 decision makers as far as Colin Kaepernick is concerned, that it begins with, and that's the 32 owners. Are we, if the chance comes, would we sign him? And as I said, that discussion has already been. Anybody that says there hasn't been a discussion about that, whether it's we're not signing him or we'll talk about it if the opportunity presents itself, that's already been done. I guarantee you that has already been done. And Stephen Ross, as we said, didn't have a problem with the kneeling. I just think Cutler was a better fit with Adam Gase in this offense than was Colin Kaepernick.
But it does, leave the question in place: what happens with Kaepernick? We are now on the verge of pretty much every team in the NFL. By this time, the end of the week, every team in the NFL will have played their first preseason.
They will,
game.
but
I mean, it's getting late early out here.
We're waiting for it. That's what we're waiting for is the injury. That's what you thought you may have had in Baltimore. And as I said earlier about the owner there kind of saying, pray for us, we're still thinking about it. And I think or you don't know what you're going to do. And at the end of the day, it's their choice. There are players calling owners cowards for not signing Colin Kaepernick. Listen, we can all say what we want to say, but it's up to them. And if you ever own a business, you get to call the shots. Okay, and these owners own their teams, so they get to call the shots. And you may not like it, you may not agree with it, but they're in the position to do it, and they're the ones that are going to be the initial ones making the decision on Colin Kaepernick.
So you wonder, it has to sort of, for him to get an opportunity now, it's going to have to fall into whatever that. Whatever what are those graphs called, like a Venn diagram or something like that, where there's like one circle and another, and someplace they meet. There's a circle of owners who would consider Kaepernick, and then the circle of teams that need a quarterback, i.e., someone gets hurt now, and there's going to have to be a place where those two things come together. Right. And I would have thought Miami was a place. Again, there was the unique circumstance here with Cutler. I don't think there's another team in the league that would have signed Cutler. I genuinely don't believe there was another. Well, I mean, they may have kicked the tires. But I don't think there's another team in the league that would have gone as far to signing Jay Cutler as Miami did.
This was the perfect storm.
It was.
It was absolutely the perfect storm for Jay Cutler and not for Colin Kaepernick in this case.
So it is going to have to happen somewhere else at this point, and I don't know where that is. Here is a quote actually from Stephen Ross before the injury to Tannehill, again, the owner of the Dolphins, on whether or not Kaepernick is being blackballed. Quote, I would sure hope not. I know there's been a lot written about it, but owners and coaches, they'll do anything it takes to win. If they think he can help them win, I'm sure I would hope they would sign him. Well, again, that's certainly not the way it is playing out. I don't believe it at all to be true. I believe that there is, for lack of a better word, a disorganized blackballing going on here, which is to say I don't think the owners got together and said, you don't sign him, I won't sign him. But I think that most of the owners individually on their own will not sign him.
If you're an owner and you say he's not going to be on our team, do you want to say that owner blackballed him? Then so be it. The owner doesn't want to sign him. And as far as helping you win, remember you heard Steve Bisciotti, one of the things he did say is he said, we're about bringing guys on to help this team win. And he even said, he goes, I'm not sure how much I think Kaepernick helps us win. Now, that could be I'm going to use the football talk as far as wins and losses to cover the fact that I don't want him on this team. I have no idea. Not in the guy's head. But what I do know is what I said before. That thing got dragged out, in my eyes, got to be ridiculous because the conversations have been had already. So to say you're hemming and hawing and thinking about it, I don't buy it. I just don't buy that.
Straight Talk Wireless nationwide coverage on America's largest and most dependable 4G LTE networks. And so here we are headlong into Pro Football 2017 and already huge stories out there to get to. We'll take a brief pause here. We have Bomani Jones coming this morning and Dan Lebitard, Herm Edwards, Keegan Keegan-Michael Key will be in our studio, and that should be great fun today as well. But coming up next, I've been looking forward to playing this for you. I'm dying to hear your reaction and anyone's who may not have had a chance to hear it yesterday. Tom Brady last week said whether he had a concussion or not last season is nobody's business. One of the most respected voices in sports strongly disagrees. You'll hear that and make up your own mind as we continue the next hour right here, Mike and Mike.
Guys don't really talk about antiperspirant. Despite that, 91% of Dove Men Plus Care users recommend it. Here's what they said.
It blocks the, perspiration, I think is the fancy word.
It's comfortable. It smells nice. My girl likes the smell.
Well, I don't know. It's hard. I think it's quite masculine. My underarms aren't the worst thing at the gym.
It's kind of like the Hoover Dam from my armpits, I guess.
Dove Men Plus Care antiperspirant. Tough on sweat, not on skin.
You're listening to Love Advice with Leanne. Caller, you're on the air.
Hi, Leanne. Longtime listener, first-time caller. Why, in your professional opinion, do you never take my calls off the air?
Is this Carl?
Yep, it's Carl. I mean, we had a few dates. Everything was great. I thought,
Well, when you switch to Geico, you could save a lot of money on car insurance.
Okay, awesome.
You should call them.
I will.
Geico, because saving 15% or more on car insurance is always a great answer.
Home isn't just a place. It's a feeling that you're safe to enjoy the things that matter most. ADT lets you take that feeling with you. Whether you're at home, your business, or online, we help keep you safe. With security systems, home automation, alarms, and surveillance. So you can feel at home wherever you are. Go to ADT.com to get that feeling for less than $1 a day. ADT. Home. Safe home.
There we are. We're back in Better Than Ever. Mike and Mike presented by Progressive Insurance. Our guests on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line, and they will include on this morning Bomani Jones and Dan Lebitard. Herman Edwards and the actor and the hilarious Keegan-Michael Key will be by our studio as well. So great fun to be had, again, with the guests on the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. And, Dan Lebitard can give us some insight into this, the signing of Jay Cutler and what that means. There were two different ways to look at it. Again, we spent most of the first hour on this, and we're going to move to other stuff here. But there are almost every quarterback signing that will take place in the NFL this preseason will be viewed as a team turning its back on Kaepernick.
Right.
This, to me, might have been one of the, if not the only, unique circumstances where it really was not that, where the nature of the relationship between Gaze and Cutler dictated that Cutler was, they believed, actually a better option than Kaepernick, even if in the big picture he isn't a better player.
Listen, I completely agree. He is 34 years old. I get that. Matt Moore, the backup now, who will be the starter until Jay Cutler gets caught up to speed, which shouldn't be too long, is 32. Cap, is a guy in his 20s. So I get the upside of that, but this is basically a year. A year to fill in for Ryan Tannehill as the quarterback of the Miami Dolphins, and they hope into the future for the Miami Dolphins. So you get a guy that's familiar. I'll continue to say it. When you're learning a system, it's like learning a different language. And Jay Cutler doesn't have to do that because he knows the system and he knows the language Adam Gase uses. So it absolutely was the first name that I thought of. That Jay. I said, if Jay wants to come out of retirement, all he's missed right now is an off season. So he hasn't missed a year of football. Now, I don't know what he's been doing. If you're retiring, that probably means you're not training for the sport. But let's also be honest, training for the quarterback position as opposed to an offensive lineman or a linebacker or a cornerback might be a little different. He needs to throw and he needs to get in football shape, no doubt about it. And that's something he'll have time to do because it's at the beginning of the preseason.
When last seen, his wife was taking a picture of his naked butt on some island vacation.
Trying to forget about that.
And putting that out there. Yeah. That was when I remember saying the next day, he's retired.
You did.
There's nowhere in the world that guy's coming back to play. And he's allowing his wife to put that out there. And now here he is, $10 million to make a man do things. Mm-hmm. All right, brought to you by Mike and Mike, brought to you by Upside. Now save big on travel. Get a big gift card with every trip you buy. You will love Upside.com. That's Upside.com.
And real quick, let me say about that. There is that side of it. How much did he have to be talked into playing? Okay? Because now, so if the money was right, Colin Kaepernick, we all believe, wants to play.
Right.
Everybody's saying we need to hear from him, He's choosing not to do an interview. Certainly, that's his right to do or to not do. There is that side of it. Jay Cutler didn't want to play football anymore. or at least was going into the booth, and maybe he didn't get the love he wanted somewhere. I have no idea. And I don't know, which report you want to believe. He was, even in talking to Miami, he was leaning towards staying in the booth, but maybe the money got good enough for you to say, okay, I'm going to do it. What's the last situation we had in that one where someone got basically money whipped to do their job? Phil Jackson.
Oh, yeah.
And how well did that turn out?
Terribly.
So there is a thought process of, did he have to get talked into this? And did the money say, okay, now I want to play? So
would that concern you?
For getting I don't care about the look on the sideline. Jay Cutler is what he is. He's not going to be some rah-rah leader. I'm not talking about that. But the desire to play, to want to go in there and do the grind. Now, a lot of the grind is in the offseason. You're getting ready for the regular season now. Is okay, I'm going to get there 2 weeks into it. Is it going to be like, well, now I know why I wanted to be out of this game. I didn't want to do it anymore. I don't know. That only Jay Cutler can answer that. But if you have to, I don't know, and I don't know how much he had to be talked into doing this. So if you really had to be talked into it, yeah, there's a little bit in the back of my mind saying, how much of the want to is there?
The comparison I would make to it, and I saw Peter King wrote an interesting one, because on August 6th of 2008, Mike Tannenbaum, who was the general manager then of the Jets, called Bus Cook, who was the agent of a quarterback who everyone thought was sort of done, and figured out a way to get Brett Favre to the Jets. August 6th, 2017, so 9 years later to the day, Mike Tannenbaum, now the GM of the Dolphins, called Bus Cook, the agent for a quarterback everyone thought was done, and talked Jay Cutler into coming to Miami. So there's some interesting symmetry and a coincidence on the dates there. But our Jeff Darlington, again, NFL reporter, suggests this was not as much about money as it was about Jay wanting to go back and play in a place where they genuinely wanted him.
The money wasn't the ultimate deciding factor here. From Cutler's standpoint, it was all of a sudden this respect factor that everybody in the organization was now stepping up. From ownership to the front office, they were all saying, we want you here. To the point where, just as we were talking about, $10 million with the chance to earn up to $3 million in incentives on the end of that. So, money is nice, and so is respect. And all of a sudden, Jay Cutler says, oh, I can deal with that.
And I'm sure on the other side of that, people are going to say, well, why didn't he get that in the offseason? Why didn't maybe they go after him in the offseason? Well, they had a quarterback in Ryan Tannehill, who was the quarterback now and for the future of this team. So there was really no need to sign Jay Cutler to come in that situation. But now the situation that presents itself, and, okay, if he feels like he was wanted, but again, I wasn't there. I don't know what money they started at. I don't know if he used that as leverage to get more. So, and I'm not in Jay Cutler's head of the want to be there. There's I'm going to agree to play football. So there's a natural assumption, well, he wants to play football. Well, I don't know that for a fact. That's just something to me that would be in the back of my mind a little bit of how much did he have to be talked into coming back.
All right, we'll wait and see how that thing turns out. And again, we'll get perspective from both Bomani and Dan Le Batard and Herm Edwards as the morning continues. We are Mike and Mike. We're presented by Progressive Insurance, and they will be on the Shell Pennzoil Performance line. Meanwhile, let's get to the next piece of business here. Tom Brady last week while we were away there was finally an opportunity to ask him about his wife, Gisele Bundchen, saying that Tom had a concussion during the year last year, which for a variety of reasons that we don't need to go into here, any sports fan knows, is newsworthy in that he was never on the injury report with it. And there's that side of the story. And then there's the whole, we're talking a lot about football and concussions and CTE and brain injuries and all of that lately. And he's the biggest star in the sport. He just turned 40 years old. So Brady was finally asked about it, and he gave the following answer.
I don't want to get into, things that happened in my past, certainly medical history and so forth. I really don't think that's anybody's business. So, what happened last year, and, I'm focused on this year and improving and working on things I need to get better at. So that's how I approach everything. I mean, I'm not sitting here worried about last year or 5 years ago. There's other people that do worry about that, my wife or my parents or my sisters or, people that love me and care about me. But, I do the best I can do to come out and be prepared to play, and mentally and physically, and, I give the game everything I can.
Okay, so the headline there, the headline is, it's nobody's business. Mm-hmm. And then he went on and explained a lot of other things that are reasonable. Before I get your take on it, Mike, let's hear from Bob Lee, who yesterday, I believe this was on yesterday morning's E60, had a very strong response. Here's Bob Lee.
Tom Brady isn't known as a scrambling quarterback, but Friday morning he was an open field marvel. Talking to reporters at Patriots camp, and by the way, a Brady press availability can be as frequent as a solar eclipse. Brady was asked flat out by our colleague Mike Reese whether Gisele Bündchen's statement that her husband had suffered concussions was indeed accurate. Tom Brady's response? It's none of your business. The hell it isn't, Tom. With enhanced NFL protocols now in place to diagnose and treat brain trauma, that the league's greatest ever quarterback may have had concussions despite never being listed as such on an injury report, that is news. So was Roger Goodell's response to that recent CTE case series. He cited a 4-year-old study on a longer lifespan for players, even as his chief medical officer was saying, quote, it's very clear repetitive head injuries bring long-term health risks. Tom Brady just turned 40. He says this is all none of our business. And, Tom, I sincerely and honestly hope you can say that as you celebrate many healthy birthdays in the years ahead.
So there's Bob Lee, who I'm not going to take a poll on this. He's probably the most respected person, in, if not in all of sports journalism, right near the top. And there he is using a phrase. I've been at ESPN 21 years. I've never heard him say something quite as directly as he said that, and he has said a lot of things. So that's a pretty strong comment. Mike, what was your reaction?
Zero issue of what Brady said. Zero. And he doesn't owe Bob Lee or anybody else an explanation of the history of his injuries. Especially, was it they're public. They're unless you're accusing the New England Patriots of not putting an injury on an injury list, which is public, make that accusation then, if you want to do that. But was Tom Brady listed on a concussion report last year?
No, he was not.
No, he was not.
That's the point.
That's exactly. What's the point?
The point is that if he had a concussion and they didn't list it.
Well, then I said, have your issue with the Patriots. Does anybody have an issue with the Patriots? Are we ripping the Patriots at this point?
The question, no one is answering the question, did he have a concussion or not, except his wife, who says he did.
Right.
So the question is, did you have a concussion or not? Your wife says you did. If you did, it wasn't on the injury report. Now we have a problem.
No. The problem would be if he didn't say anything. And she's just diagnosing at home if he says he has a headache.
Meaning if he didn't say anything to
the team. And you know what? That's his right. Do you think the players aren't as educated as certainly my era or this era of player is as educated, and we still have a long way to go, but is as educated as any on what's going on? Do we believe that or not?
They certainly should be,
okay.
Yes.
And if a player wants to still hide a concussion, it's his right. That's his right. Are you saying that's not his right? Does he owe it to Bob Lee or to anybody else to say he had a concussion? If he chooses to do that, that's his body and his right to do. So now, I don't know if you're getting into, again, are we accusing the Patriots of hiding this? Are we accusing Tom Brady of getting stung in the head and not saying anything to the Patriots? Where are we going here? I mean, you tell me. I don't know.
Well, I think it's not an unfair question to say, did you have a concussion last year or not? He can say no.
Well, he can
if
say,
the truth is no, he can say no.
But he didn't. He can say whatever he wants. And he said, I'm not talking. First of all and foremost, that's a New England Patriot answer.
Right.
So we're going to be shocked. All of a sudden, we're going to think that's going to change, that they're going to be this open, team, or Tom Brady's going to give some sort of open interview when they don't do that. So number one, that's not going to happen. Number two is he doesn't have to talk about it. He has every right in the world to. Right when Brian Urlacher retired, he said, I'd still hide one. And you know what? That may not be the smartest thing in the world to do, but it's his choice, right? It's Tom Brady's choice to say, I'm not going to talk about my injuries in the past. They have nothing to do with what's going on right now. I have people that worry about that. My wife, my family, my siblings, they worry about that. That's fine. I don't. I move on to the next year. It's not his responsibility to talk about it or to say, yeah, I had a... Well, because what happens if he says, yes, I had a concussion last year? Then what happens? Are you kidding me? Then the Patriots already seem to be a bullseye for the league. Now, why wasn't it reported? When did you have it? What did you have it? Did you say anything? If you said anything, why wasn't it reported? Come on. Everything that happens from that point on?
Yeah, no, that's why this was a big deal to begin with. When Gisele said he had a concussion.
Yeah, I understand.
That's why it became a big deal.
I understand that.
One of three things had happened at that point. either A, she's wrong, he didn't have a concussion. There's no obvious reason to think she would have that wrong, but that's at least a possibility. B, he had a concussion and he didn't tell anybody about it. His wife knew about it, but the team didn't know about it. Or C, the team knew about it and he was never listed as having a concussion. It strikes me as those are the three realistic options. There isn't a good one for him in answering the question, but that doesn't mean it's not a legitimate question.
I didn't say it wasn't a legitimate question. Everybody's having a problem with his answer. I don't have a problem with his answer at all. The question is fine. The question is a fair question to ask. But because Tom Brady doesn't break it down and open about it, we're owed that? We're not owed that.
So that's you've gotten to the crux of the interesting part of this, which is with the very particular place we are right now in history, with where football and concussions meet and what it's going to mean for the league going forward and what it means. If there is a story where the biggest star in the sport's wife said he had a concussion last year, I will never, ever tell a person he doesn't have a right or she doesn't have a right to keep their own medical history private if they choose to, right? Lots and lots of people do it. And that's his own business. Except when you're a football player, there are rules that stipulate that this stuff has to be made public if you have a variety of certain injuries. So it is worth knowing. I mean, I think that
what rule are you talking about? There's no rule
to disclose injuries.
No, I know that. There's no rule that Tom Brady said he has to. If in fact this happened, there's no rule that he has to go to the training staff and say, I got stung in the head.
Bingo. Is there at this point an unwritten rule that says, in the bigger picture, you really need to be doing that? If the biggest star in the sport is hiding the fact that he has a concussion, what message is that sending to everyone?
What have I said about this? What have I said about this all along? The players are the last one that are going to admit it. The players are the last ones. Some will. Some have retired. You have the right to do it however you want. You have the right to walk away from the game. We're at the professional level now there, so let's not start mixing, college down to high school down to Little League. Okay, we're at the professional level where guys have said, you know what? I'm scared of this. I'm walking away. And you'll have a guy probably maybe right next to him on that team who will get stung in the head and not say a word. Or he won't get stung and it won't be as bad an issue as some people make it out to be. I mean, it's such a tough situation now because there are obviously legitimate concussions. And by the way, before everybody starts, I understand repeated shots to the head are going to cause things down the road as we're still finding out. I understand all that. I'm talking about players, and I'm talking about now going to the younger levels. When people have said, well, how is a 9 or 10-year-old going to know? I said they're not. That's why coaches and parents are getting more and more educated on understanding that. Now we're at the pro level. Guys are making decisions. Tom Brady can make whatever decision that he wants. Okay? And if he wants to hide an injury, he can hide an injury. Is it all of a sudden his responsibility to say, I have a concussion? I have a concussion.
I guess I would ask you that based upon his particular standing in the sport, just how significant he is. He's the greatest quarterback that ever lived and the biggest star in the sport. We're trying to tell high school kids, if you have a concussion, say something to your coach. Tell someone. Don't just try and hide it. That's not the right thing to do. So is there an obligation? I understand what you're saying. Right. And my initial reaction actually in this was what yours is, which is, he really doesn't have to tell anybody if he had a concussion if he kept it secret. Now, if he did tell the coaching staff and they try to...
That's a whole different thing.
At this point, I think he's smart enough to know not to do that. Yeah. Right? There are some things, there's the lies of omission.
And let's also think he may not have had a concussion.
Well, so that,
let's also think that he may have
said, and just say, well, my wife, she was confused. But now you're getting into a level of detail that you probably don't feel like getting involved in.
And name me the last New England Patriot that got into detail in an interview.
Right. So I just think, look, this was obviously something they knew was going to be asked.
Right.
This was the answer they prepared. The answer they prepared was, it's no one's business whether I did or I didn't. And I guess I would just ask you, based on the unique circumstances that we are dealing with as much attention, focus, and significance as there is on head injuries in and around football, does the biggest star in the sport have some obligation to be as open as he can be about it, to send that message to young people who look up to him?
No, he doesn't have the responsibility. In my eyes, he doesn't. His responsibility is to his team, and if he wants to do what he wants to do to be out in the field and play, that's what he's allowed to do. And I get what people are going to say, well, wait a minute, what message did that send? Because we want younger players, especially, when you get into high school, to not try and play through it. That's why we have, you want coaches to recognize it as well. Would you like everybody to make a smart decision at times? Certainly you would, but I'm just telling you it's not going to happen. So to sit there and rip a guy because it's not happening, I'm sorry, I don't buy it. When you get in there and you're working and you're playing and you want to be on the field, you're just not going to talk about certain things. You're not going to admit to certain things. That's how it's been. And while I think that is changing and some players are, as I said, they're walking away from the game now. They're walking, and it's their choice to do. And if a guy wants to get hurt, a shoulder, but I know we're talking about a head here, and doesn't want to say anything, then that's his right. That's his right to do. Is it not?
That, I guess, is what I'm asking.
Yes.
Have we reached a point now where there is some obligation on behalf, particularly of veteran players who've made all the money in the world, for whom the sport has done so much, to do something that is in the greater good? And if indeed we think that Tom Brady making some sort of statement whose message would be, listen, if you have a concussion, tell someone about it. Don't hide it. Don't make that mistake. That's what football used to be, and that's not the right way to do this. Would the greater good be served by that? And if so, does a player of his caliber have some obligation to do it?
To your point, the greater good would probably, because we're always talking about what stature of player says something and what kind of weight does it carry. So from that side of it, I get it. Yes, I understand that. But that doesn't mean he's obligated to do it.
If the greatest player in the league and the biggest star says, it's nobody's business what happened with me.
Right.
Is that sending the reverse message? Is that in some way sending the opposite message, which is to young players who are smart enough to understand all the things you said, and anyone who really follows the sport does, which is, hey, Tom Brady says, if you have a concussion, don't do anything about it. Keep it secret so you don't go back on the field and you don't incriminate yourself and your coaching staff and all the rest of that. And again, I'm not criticizing Brady. I understand what he's saying.
Well, no, and I understand.
I get the criticism on the other side,
I understand
too.
The bigger picture. And let's also say we're assuming that he had a concussion. Let's also be careful of that.
Well, because if he didn't, then it's much easier to say I didn't, right? It's very easy to say, no, I didn't have a concussion.
But all the talk is we're assuming that he had a concussion and he just hit it. But players will do that. Players will hide that. To your point about the message, yeah, you would like the message to be different. My point is that's a slow change. And to say one person is more obligated because he's a bigger star than someone else, I don't buy. Sorry. You know what? It's his choice on how he wants to deal with it. But I do understand what you're saying, what kind of weight that would carry to say, hey, if you have an injury, report it. I get all that. And it sounds great and it makes sense. But when you're out in the football field, unfortunately, there are things that are going to happen that you're just going to play through, and that includes still getting hit in the head.
I understand that. And is that or is that not a problem? Like, if we don't change that, does nothing ever get better? Let's pause on that thought, and we'll come back. We'll continue to talk about it because
things have already gotten better.
Guys don't really talk about antiperspirant. Despite that, 91% of Dove Men Plus Care users recommend it. Here's what they said.
It blocks the, perspiration, I think is the fancy word.
It's comfortable. It smells nice. My girl likes the smell.
Well, I don't know. It's hard. I think it's quite masculine. My underarms aren't the worst thing at the gym.
It's kind of like the Hoover Dam from my armpits, I guess.
Dove Men Plus Care Antiperspirant. Tough on sweat, not on skin.
Back to school time already? It sure is. Sport Clips Haircuts wants you to leap to the head of the class with our giveaway of back-to-school gear plus a year of free haircuts. Visit Sport Clips for the right cut and ask for the MVP experience. Then we'll take care of the rest. After all, winning hair isn't everything. It's the only thing. Review the rules and enter to win at sportclips.com/back-to-school. Sport Clips, it's good to be a guy. No purchase necessary. Ends August 25th, 2017. Must be 18 or older. Subject to official rules at sportclips.com. Void where prohibited.
All right, complicated issue here, and I want to bring Bomani in on it here. Mike, you and I can go back to some of the questions that you have about it, because I think it's an important topic, but I'd like to get Bo's thoughts on this as well. You know Bomani Jones from The Right Time with Bomani Jones, coast to coast every afternoon here on ESPN Radio. Good morning, Bo.
Morning, gentlemen.
This is a complicated one. Tom Brady last week says, it's nobody's business if I had a concussion last week or not. My medical history is my business, it's nobody else's business. Bob Lee says very directly on ESPN yesterday, the hell it's not. That's a direct quote. Mike and I have been going back and forth on it here for the last 10 minutes or so. It seems to me it raises a lot of interesting questions. What thoughts do you have?
I think the dilemma in this is, on one level, he's right. It is not our business whether or not he had a concussion, because that does fall in the line of medical stuff, and medical stuff is not our business. It is, however, our business whether or not the Patriots and Brady concealed the fact that he had a concussion. Right now, it's a subtle distinction. I certainly understand, but no, we don't get to ask him, so what was going on with you medically? But we do get to ask, hey man, did you guys lie about whether or not you had a concussion in the course of this game? I don't know where it is that you ultimately settle it, but I feel like where Brady comes to us and says it's none of our business, we didn't really ask. Somebody told us, and so what are we supposed to do from there?
Yeah, listen, they're perfectly right to ask the question. I mean, his wife did say that on TV, so I don't think it's wrong to ask the question at all, and I have no problem with his answer at all. A, it's kind of a New England Patriot answer, and B, at this point, Bomani, what answer can he give that's not going to put more scrutiny on him or the team? Yes, I had a concussion and I told them about it and they covered it up. Yeah, that'll go over well. Or yes, I had a concussion and I hid it from them, and then more scrutiny will go on him. So I think one of his ways, but I do think he's serious in saying, you know what? It's in the past. I have people in my life that worry about my health. I worry about this year coming up and what's happening in the future.
Yeah, I don't know what we're supposed to do with it at this point. Like, to be fair, I don't quite know, and I'm not sure if we pursue this the same way if it's anybody other than Tom Brady. The same way that if Tom Brady's wife is not as famous as his wife is, we don't find out about this in the first place. But Brady's basically saying, if you want to find out about this, go ahead and find out, except you can't find out because it's my medical stuff. So, I mean, it does wind up us going in a circle.
The one place that I think is interesting is at the particular point in history where we sit right now, Bomani, with how important the head injury issue is in football and how important it is that the proper messages get sent to young people in the sport. And no one is more at the forefront of that, Mike, right now than you and your family are, but the messaging that goes to the young players. Does a star of Brady's magnitude have some obligation to be more forthcoming than he seems to be on this issue, if only because it would send a message that, you know what, head injuries are not something that we conceal. Head injuries are something, if you have it, tell your coach, tell your doctor, do something, do the right thing. Don't try and hide it like you might hide a sprained ankle. Does he have any obligation along those lines?
I think there's an argument to be made about that because of his visibility and the impact that he could ultimately have, that yes, he should be the one to do this. I think the people that are going to be at the forefront of that, though, are really going to be younger guys who have been indoctrinated in this in a different way. Tom Brady's 40 years old. The attitude that he came up with about how you're supposed to handle these things is completely different than it'll be for, say, a guy like Andrew Luck, who's become an NFL player after we've kind of had an enlightenment about this. But at the same time, Tom Brady's argument to you would be, my obligation is to help my football team win. That is number one, and that is really what the expectation is that most people have, which is why the responsibility is on the team to make sure that this does not happen more so than the player, because we know that players cannot be trusted on this. Like, take Alex Smith, for example. Given that Alex Smith lost his job in San Francisco because of a concussion, if I had to guess, Alex Smith is going to try to hold it in the road as best he can under those circumstances because he knows what can happen when he winds up going to the bench. That's why teams have to be the ones that stand up and say, no, we got to sit you down.
Yeah, and they've been doing that more and more. We'll get into more of that, and it's a good point about Tom Brady and the fact that the big deal made that he is 40 years old, has been in this game a long time, and may still have some of that old school mentality to him. Jay Cutler signing in Miami. Did it surprise you at all? Everybody talking about Colin Kaepernick, his name coming up again with an injured quarterback, but to us, to Green and I, Cutler seemed to be the fit with Adam Gase. What were your thoughts?
Well, I think Cutler coming off the torn labrum, there's a real question as to what he has left. And, I mean, I don't know what Jay Cutler has been doing in his offseason to get himself ready to play football other than broadcast preparation stuff. Last time I saw him, he was out there with his booty in the wind, taking pictures with his wife, talk about no tan lines. Like, I don't get the feeling that Jay Cutler's been throwing the ball through a tire swing, getting ready for somebody to make this call. But it was the call that the Miami Dolphins had to make. With Kaepernick, I said that I think there are 31 teams that he could sign with, and I think that fans would ultimately ultimately get over whatever beef they have. And then there are the Miami Dolphins. And with the T-shirt with Castro on it, I lived in Miami for 4 years. They ain't letting that one slide. That wasn't happening. So if those are the options that you have, then Jay Cutler is probably the best one, which leads to something fascinating because I don't think you pay Jay Cutler $10 million if you think that Ryan Tannehill is going to play this year. After this season, the Dolphins can get from under Ryan Tannehill's contract pretty easily. It's going to be really interesting to see how this plays out for the future of the Dolphins.
Again, to the point, you were there in Miami for all of those years. Stephen Jones is one who was supportive of the players on his team who followed Kaepernick in his movement and knelt during the anthem. So what you're saying is you think this is not
Stephen
about
Ross. Stephen Ross.
What did I say?
Stephen Jones.
Oh,
Stephen
sorry.
Ross.
Yeah, Stephen Jones. Stephen Ross, the owner of the Dolphins, was one who supported his players in that. So you're saying you think this is more about Castro than it is about kneeling during the anthem.
Yeah, absolutely. Ask Ozzie Guillen about that, right? Like, this does not work in that town. There is nothing that he could say that would work in that town to explain this one. Keep in mind, that T-shirt I think he wore in August when they came and played the Dolphins. Armando Salguero, the Herald, was ready for him. Like, I've been waiting months to get these questions in. And there's a large segment of the city that feels that way, and I guarantee that that's a level of stress that Stephen Ross doesn't want to deal with, and that's a circumstance that is entirely unique to all NFL cities.
What do you think happened in Baltimore with Kaepernick?
I think what happened in Baltimore was that the decision was made by Bisciotti that he just didn't want to be the one to deal with that. I don't know. I can't say exactly what's going on there, but I wonder for all these NFL teams, what are the emails and phone calls they're getting, not from fans, but like the police union and the guys that make the threats after something where they say, we're not going to work, we're not going to do our off-duty security stuff that we had done for you guys before. Like all of those things. I also think that Baltimore winds up in a different situation where if you bring Kaepernick in to play behind Joe Flacco, I don't know if you do that with the expectation he plays behind Joe Flacco all season long. It would have been far more likely that he would have wound up being on the field in Baltimore, and I don't know how prepared they were for what would come after that. But I think the rich guys have made the decision that they don't want to offend their rich friends. I don't think this has that much to do with fans exactly. They don't want to offend their rich friends, and that matters more than winning football games.
So does that ultimately mean that we will start this season and Colin Kaepernick will not be on an NFL team?
I would be surprised if Colin Kaepernick plays another game in the NFL.
Yeah, I've sort of gotten to that point as well. If it didn't happen in the circumstances that we've seen come up here, I'm not sure what circumstances it will. All right, Bomani Jones, we'll hear you today and every day, coast to coast on ESPN Radio. Thank you. See you soon.
No problem, guys.
That's Bomani Jones. That was very direct on the Castro T-shirt part of it. I knew that was a factor in it, and yet that was as direct as could be. And again, for those of you who follow him, he worked on Dan Le Batard's show down there in Miami, lived in Miami for 4 years. Dan himself will join us off the top of the next hour, and we'll have a very direct understanding of that. We'll get back to your thoughts on the Brady.
Yeah, because there's more. There's a lot of. When I said the league it is dealing with it better. Now, I'm getting a lot of people kind of saying, I'm laughing at that. How has it gotten better? It's gotten better, and I'll explain that part of it as well.
Well, Greeny, we're halfway through another baseball season, and we're really seeing some players who stand out as winners.
Kind of like business travelers who win at business by staying at La Quinta Inns and Suites.
That's because you can put your La Quinta Returns loyalty points to work on the spot with instant free nights.
Just drive up with no reservation and instantly redeem points for a free night that same night simply by using the La Quinta app.
It's like hitting a grand slam.
With an app instead of a bat.
Well played.
Prepare to win at business by learning more about instant free nights and check out the summer rates at lq.com. The people from 1-800-Flowers, our friends there, they've been a great partner of ours for years.
Yeah.
Yesterday was my birthday. They sent us like a bouquet of flowers, and they designed it to look like my dog Phoebe. If there's no way in the world my son Steven, who's the only one home, is awake. There's no way in the world. He's up now to take a picture of this.
Yeah.
But it is so adorable. It looks like, you know what my dog looks like, little white puffball of a dog. They made like a bouquet of flowers, so thank you very much to them. Look just like Phoebe.
Edible?
No, I don't think so. They're flowers.
Oh, and there's such things as edible flowers?
Correct. I don't believe this was edible. I didn't try to eat it. I just noticed how cute it was.
I would have tried.
But anyway, I appreciate it.
That is nice.
Just when it said summer birthdays, that occurred to me. Okay, so you've got, this is important stuff now. Let me just reset the table for those just joining us. Tom Brady said in no uncertain terms, his medical history, including whether or not he had a concussion last year, as his wife, Gisele Bündchen, said on television, is nobody's business. And that creates a variety of questions. Mm-hmm. And sometimes there aren't easy answers. Like, I'm not pounding the table saying he is obligated to say this. I think it creates a variety of questions.
So one of the things I said was the league, they are better in that situation right now. And I got more than a few tweets. They've gotten better, ? Laughed my butt off. They still have the greatest quarterback telling us to mind our own business. It's his choice. My point in it getting better is never before in the league have independent doctors or people pulled players off the field. When it was basically, if you were wobbly and you got to the sideline and you got close to the number of fingers they held up, they let you back in the game. It's gotten better because they will not pull you out of the game. And the concussion protocol will keep you out of the game. They will take your helmet away. And to get back on the field takes way more than it did to get back to go what you have to go through. So it has gotten better. Now, if you want to say getting better from the point of players recognizing it, more players under the age of 30 have retired this year than any other year. So some players are taking it how they want to deal with it. And seriously enough for them to retire.
Right.
So it has gotten better. To say it hasn't, to me, is ridiculous. Would you agree with that? That part of it has gotten better?
Oh, there are a lot of parts of it that have gotten better.
Without a doubt it's gotten. Now, as far as what's the obligation? I mean, do we know wearing a seatbelt is a smart thing to do?
Of course.
Do we know that smoking cigarettes is going to cause some bad things?
Yes.
Do people still do it?
Of course.
They still make their own choice given their situation on what they want to do. And do you think the best example of a parent that still chooses to smoke and he has a kid and the kid sees that parent smoke, should we yell at every parent on them, say, what the hell are you doing? It says it right there on the package and you're smoking in front of your kid. So now all of a sudden it's Tom Brady's responsibility to say, hey, you know what, kids, you get anything at all, get off the field. It's not going to work that way. It's just not. That's why at a young age you have parents and coaches that could recognize that more. And some players will acknowledge injury more than my generation and the generation before, or really, quite honestly, the generation right after me. We are in a new era where some players will say something. As I said right before the last break, to get to the point where the majority will, I'm sorry, that's a pipe dream. That's not happening. It's not happening. Guys aren't going to admit it, but it has gotten better. Pro football right now, from the pro side, is doing. We get all the research that's coming in about the head injuries, and the players have it. And then the players can do what they want with it. Players can say, I got hit in the head, I got stung, I think I need to come out, or they can choose not to. Just like you can choose not to wear a seatbelt, though that's a law now, so that's not as. Or you can choose to put a cigarette in your mouth, right? You know all the facts, yet you could choose to do that. And as I said, there are way more foot soldiers of the 2,000 players in the National Football League than Tom Brady. Guys who are not going to say a damn word, and I was one of them. And do you take it too far sometimes? Probably you do. But you go off the field, you know you ain't getting back on. And then all of a sudden you're not on the field, then you're out of the league. And that's what's in players' mind. So to say they don't have the right to determine how they want to deal with their injury, to me, is wrong. They do. They're a professional right now. You want to start going down in leagues and saying where is the right? And they've even had some of that taken away in pro football when they can actually have a guy stop the game and pull you off the field. So it has gotten better. But the player still has the right to decide how he wants to deal with an injury. And that's separate from we told the team and the team is hiding it. That's a whole different conversation we're having. I'm just talking from the player side. So if more players started to be cognizant of what's going on and recognize some of the dangers as we're finding out more and more, yes. Are some more doing about it? Yes. Some are retiring, and others are still not saying anything about it. But and as I'll continue to say, it's their right to do that. If you want to sit there and say it's the obligation of a parent not to smoke a cigarette in front of his kid, you can. We can scream from the mountaintop that. But you know what that parent can do? They can smoke that cigarette. You know what? And a player can hide his injury if he feels it's going to cost him. And I know everybody says Tom Brady doesn't have a thing in the world to worry about, so why not be the beacon? It's his choice. It's his choice of how he wants to deal with it. And already in this situation, in my opinion, he's in a tough situation of now going back. If something was wrong with him, how does he play it now? Let's be honest about that. Again, you admit you told the team, now the team's screwed. You said, I hid it from the team. Now there's a lot more put down on you. So it's a tough after-the-fact situation.
Well, that's why I said there were 3 options here, and they're all bad.
Yeah.
Because in one of them, he says, my wife was wrong.
Yeah.
And that just makes her look bad to have said
Nobody
that
wants
on
to do
TV.
that. No smart man wants to do that.
In every way, it's just bad.
Yeah.
And the second is, I had a concussion and I hit it, and you don't want to say that. And the third is, I had a concussion and the team knew it and we hit it. All of those are bad.
Guys don't really talk about antiperspirant. Despite that, 91% of Dove Men Plus Care users recommend it. Here's what they said.
It blocks the, perspiration, I think is the fancy word.
It's comfortable. It smells nice. My girl likes the smell.
Well, it's hard. I think it's quite masculine. My underarms aren't the worst thing at the gym.
It's kind of like the Hoover Dam from my armpits, I guess.
Dove Men Plus Care antiperspirant. Tough on sweat, not on skin.
Daddy, where do babies come from?
Honey?
Mommy went to the store.
Oh, well, you see, there's a mommy and a daddy, right?
Right.
And see, when they call Geico, they could save a bunch of money on car insurance.
Oh, really? And that makes them happy?
Yes, that makes them very happy.
That's good.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad we could have this talk, Sunshine.
Geico, because saving 15% or more on car insurance is always a great answer.